first-hand look at the Walton Group's land banking operations. China steers its economy towards a soft landing. And we look at a business that helps to bring out the beauty in you. Hello, welcome to this week's MoneyMind. Land banking investment schemes have been hit by a wave of bad publicity in recent times. Some companies offering such schemes have ceased operations, while one is under CAD investigations. And the Consumers Association says it's received numerous complaints about land banking firms. So, should investors shun this investment product altogether? Well, one of the pioneers in the industry, the Walton Group, offered MoneyMind a trip to Canada to take an in-depth and first-hand look at how it operates. And our producer, Frederick Lim, says it's been an eye-opener.
This is Calgary. In the decade between 1998 and 2007, it led the nation of Canada in annual population growth with rates of above 20%. The rates may have returned to a more modest pace, but the city is still undergoing expansion. This is clearly evident from the air, where new housing estates are springing up all around the city. Clearly, those who have had the foresight to buy undeveloped land prior to the building boom would have stood to make some money. And this, in very basic terms, is the investment proposition that the Walton Group has to offer to retail investors, both local and overseas.
The company was founded by my mother Maureen and my father Patrick in 1979. In 1982, a severe recession hit not only Western Canada, but North America as a whole. And my dad was fortunate enough that he had some cash in the bank, and he was able to buy a number of land parcels out of receivership in 1985. My dad had all of these pieces of land inside the city limits and outside the city limits, and hence began the land syndication business, where my father offered to local investors here in the city of Calgary undivided interests in those parcels. And of course, we expanded from Calgary to Southeast Asia, other parts of Canada, the United States, and of course Europe.
Essentially, a land banking investment scheme consists of getting a group of investors to chip in and buy undeveloped plots of rural land, hold it, and later sell it at a profit to a developer when urban development comes to the area. But for it to work, you must pick the right land parcels to buy. And for Walton, this is the job of Sean Cooney, who says that his team typically takes 2 to 4 years to research a targeted land parcel.
Well, key to our market selection in North America are those markets that have the most robust and predictable employment growth, and that employment growth should translate to population growth. But once you're in a city, you have to research the market, find out how population growth is changing the physical size of the city, understand that dynamic, and buy land that fits into a very predictable growth corridor. And that's key to understand. I mean, development moves in certain ways depending on employment, depending on infrastructure, and you want to understand those dynamics before you take any position. So our research explores and understands very intuitively where a city will grow, why it's going to grow, and make sure the politics supports growth in that region.
In its earlier years, Walton was content to buy cheap land on behalf of itself and its investors, sit on it, and wait for developers to call.
Back in the late 80s and into the 90s, we would syndicate the property and we would cross our fingers and we would hope that, that the path of development would encroach on our properties so that we would be able to sell them to builders and developers.
But it has since developed a much better model.
We have built-in expense reserves, what's called the concept planning reserve, to help us put the entitlements in place, whereby we could go out and hire consultants and planners and engineers to bring the lands to their highest and best use. The second evolution of the company was that we brought in that in-house talent. Planners, engineers who come to work every single day And their mandate is to get those entitlements in place for all of our lands throughout North America.
And this is the job of John Plastiras and his team.
The concept of highest and best use really is to realize the greatest opportunity with that property. And as always in business, it's not only what you do, but it's also who you associate with and what your partners do. They help us get where we need to go with our properties and our entitlements or our zonings in each individual market, because each individual market has certain nuances, and what you design and provide on the ground has to be relevant to those marketplaces. And the best way to achieve that is to have people that know the marketplace work with you.
One of the projects that Walton is most proud of is Skyview Ranch in Calgary. Many Asian investors, including 480 from Singapore, invested in the then undeveloped land that now sits under these rows and rows of houses. The Singaporean investors received about 33 million Canadian dollars in distributions from this project. As of December last year, Walton has been successful in 43 land banking projects worldwide and returned 647 million Canadian dollars back to investors.
In Singapore, we have 18,000 clients who have invested with Walton. And for this project, basically Skyview Ranch, which is called North Point Residential, the rate of return is more than 20%. Majority of investors, when they invest in Walton, they're looking for a product that is actually have low correlation with other asset class. They're looking for a stable product, basically, that has low volatility.
Walton says that currently the best land banking opportunities are in the US, where the global financial crisis has taken its toll on land and housing prices.
Every savvy investor intuitively knows you buy low to sell high. But who has the courage to do that? Right? There's always somebody saying you shouldn't do this. The US is weak right now. Well, of course it's weak right now. That is the time to buy. When the US is strong again, you're never going to have an opportunity like you have today.
Walton admits that the controversies surrounding land banking schemes in Singapore have cast a shadow on the product. But the company insists that the land banking investment model is sound if structured properly. And it is not so much the product, but the company that offers it, which investors have to be careful about.
It's paramount for the client and for the investor to take responsibility upon themselves that before they make an investment, they take a look at the company. They take a look at their experience, the people they have in place, what their research methodology is, who the asset management team is, and of course, if they have a track record. It's a challenging business in terms of attaining entitlements on properties. Getting those entitlements in place takes a lot of skill, knowledge, and experience.
Walton also says that it has no reservations for its product to be regulated by the Monetary Authority of Singapore if required.
From our perspective, that's not necessary. We treat ourselves as leaders in being transparent and open with all regulators. And of course, if that were a decision of MAS to regulate the sale of our land, of course, our intention would be to be the leaders of that within Singapore and to have very good and open relationships with the regulator.
There are other considerations, however, that investors should take into account. Land banking is an alternative investment product. And in very general terms, alternative investment products tend to be illiquid, which means you can't get out of it very easily if you need the cash suddenly. They also tend to be less well tracked by independent researchers, and you generally have to rely on the product providers themselves for information. And for unregulated products, the lack of clearly defined standards and rules means that legal recourse could be costly and time-consuming in the event of disputes.
Here's the world's